How many middle school folks do we have in this room? Okay, there's a few. Do you love going to the culmination ceremonies? Really? Well, see, I have this rule at Camino Nuevo that no ceremony can be more than an hour. We need to get to the point, celebrate, be happy, and move on. So I love going to them. And a couple of years ago, I went to one of the middle school culmination ceremonies, and it's just a happy event. I love it because it makes me happy. It makes me love what I do. I get to see the kids, I get to see their parents are happy, they're proud, the staff is proud of the work that they do, and sure enough, there's always a slideshow, right? Do you guys have slideshows on your graduation? Okay. So there's the slideshow, baby pictures, present day pictures, and there's a lot of oohs and ahs in the room, going back to the baby pictures, laughing here and there, and just a very joyful time. And I have a clicker that I forgot about. And it's heartwarming to see the baby pictures. There's wonder, there's excitement, there's funny faces. And one thing that just caught my eye was just that one moment where I was like, every baby picture had the light of life. And it was just really touching. But then I was struck because there was a present day picture of a student that was dark. And what I mean by dark is not the color of his eyes or the color of the picture, but his soul was dark. There was no joy in his eyes. The light from the baby picture had disappeared. And at that moment, I felt the discomfort of failure because one child's light might be dimming. And with that dimming, it would take away a child's natural curiosity for the world and love of learning. And for me, that was not okay. Now, there's a lot of factors that contribute to the dimming of the light. Some of them we have control over and some of them we don't. Denigration, language, hunger, poverty, environmental factors, citizenship, and a lot of others that we are very familiar with. So some of these we can control, some of them we can't. How can you educate a child in a classroom when they're hurting because their parent was deported? How can you teach a child who is in pain because their older brother's lives was lost to gang violence? Those things I can't change. You can't change if you're experiencing something like that with your children. But what we can change is how we work with the individual child and their families in overcoming these traumatic experiences that are often life-changing and sure enough have an effect on their educational trajectory. How many of you have encountered a challenge like that where you have a child or a family in crisis? It's pretty common, but we have to overcome and support them. And one of the things that I always go back to is my personal story. I grew up in the community where my schools are, actually a couple of blocks from one of my campuses. This is me when I was about 3 years old. And my parents immigrated from Mexico when I was a young child. I'm the youngest of 7 and the first in my family to go to high school and complete college. My parents were loving and are, my dad is, my mom passed away, and hardworking. And they came to this country not knowing how to read or write, but they were looking for a brighter future for their family. They never learned English, and my mom's signature was an X. And they wanted the best for me, and they wanted to support me. They valued education, and they wanted us to have an education. My brother and I were the youngest in the family when we came here. But their context was different. Where my parents came from, a high school education and a college education were not for their kids. They were for other people's kids. You went to school and you got educated and then you went to get a job and you contributed to the family income. So their context was different. And that's where I grew up, within that context. So my parents really challenged my educational trajectory, not because they didn't want me to be educated, but because they didn't know what the education system was like in this country. They just didn't know. They didn't know that education can break the cycle of poverty. They didn't know that I could surpass their highest aspirations for my educational successes. They just did not know And we were living in a system that didn't take the time nor allocated the resources to share this knowledge with them so that it could support me in more productive ways. So I succeeded despite of, and you may know folks that encounter challenging circumstances and are successful. Some of you may have survived despite of. But one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that resilience varies from person to person. And while we should support all of the students that come from challenging backgrounds, our focus really should be on those students that are school and community dependent, who will not prevail without our support. I don't do the work that I do because of kids like me. I do the work that I do because of kids like my brother, who dropped out of high school before he even started high school. At the end of 8th grade, that was the end of his educational career. My parents didn't fail him. The system failed him. My parents wanted the best for my brother, and within their context, that was the best for my brother. And a lot of other parents do what they believe is the best for their children. Sometimes what parents need is just some information and a little time from us, that we take that time to sit down with them and understand where they're coming from and share the information that they need so that they can better support their children in a different context, in a foreign context to them. So that's why at Camino Nuevo we allocate a lot of resources to developing the kind of parent partnerships that we want to see happen, where we really support and co-educate our children in partnership with their parents and families. I often tell the story of my early efforts at Camino Nuevo when I first became a principal, many, many years ago. I started the typical monthly coffee with Ms. Ponce, and nobody came. Nobody came for 4 months. For 4 months, I had coffee and pan dulce with the assistant principal. There we sat, we chatted, half an hour. We waited, but I didn't give up. And I didn't give up because I believed that the parents would come. I did not give up in the belief that I had that they would show up. And sure enough, by the 5th month, 2 parents showed up. So I was very excited, and I extended the royal treatment, started talking to them, very excited. Well, shortly into the greetings, they got to their purpose. They wanted to know, Ms. Ponce, why do you keep doing this? We're not gonna come. Nobody comes. You've been doing it every month and nobody comes. And I was shocked. I was like, okay, but I quickly responded. I said, you came, why did you come? And that started a conversation. I broke through because 2 parents showed up, because I waited for those 2 parents to show up and engage them in a conversation. The next month, I had 4, and then I had more. And now I can say that at Camino Nuevo, almost every single student is represented by a family member in some way every month of their school experience. And that is what happens when you truly partner with parents. So many times the non-engagement of families and parents is really due to marginalization and us not understanding the barriers that they're facing. The parents at Camino Nuevo did not show up because they didn't know my intentions. They didn't trust the principal, right? It didn't matter that it was me. There was no trust. If I had not waited them out, I would not have learned this about them. But I was patient, I waited, and I allowed them to teach me what I needed to do so that we could truly start developing a partnership. So the child, when we look at the child, a child is really anchored in their family, in their school, and in their community. It is important to understand the interconnectedness of all of these entities and to really look at a child as part of a family, and that family as part of a community. We can't pull the child out and expect them to be successful. We have to look at them as a unit. And we also have to come to terms with the fact that we can't educate a child alone. No teacher can do it, no school can do it. We need to leverage partnerships with families, with communities, with organizations to bring in the resources that our kids need, not just the academic ones, because in order for our kids to be successful, we have to support the whole child. So we must encourage our kids to really explore their place in their community and to understand how everything is interconnected in life. At Camino Nuevo, we are consistent in reframing the narrative that defines our kids to a narrative that expands their universe, that really builds them up over time to realize their full potential. So the approach that Camino Nuevo takes is an approach of an ethic of care to protect their light. We want our students to envision a reality where high school is a given and college is accessible and opportunities open up. And because of this approach, Camino Nuevo has consistently had graduation rates in the high 90s. This year, we have over 80% of our students getting into four-year colleges, and 100% of our students are graduating, meeting the A through G requirements. So we look at the college opportunity ratio when we're really looking at the kind of program that Camino Nuevo offers. And if you're not familiar with this, it really looks at what we should expect in the state of California in terms of high school graduation and college eligibility. So in California, out of 100 students, we should expect 67 of those 100 to graduate from high school and 26 of those students to graduate meeting the A through G requirements. At Camino Nuevo, what we should expect is of the 100 students, 98 of those students will graduate from high school and 98 of those students will graduate meeting the A through G requirements. And the reason we get these results is not because of what we do. We are not really reinventing or doing anything incredibly innovative. What we do differently is our how. How we do what we do by really looking at what the whole child needs, by looking at the child as a unit as opposed to an individual, is that we get these results. So when we start to imagine getting re-engaged in reigniting students' dimming lights, when we really start to care and nurture individuals and families, our kids are going to become more curious, they're going to love learning, and they're going to be more successful. Our kids will be able to overcome all of the societal barriers around them, and will be able to protect their light. This is my son. I protect his light, and I hope that all of us are committed to protecting the lights of the children that we have in our own lives and the children that we serve through the work that we do. Thank you.